My name is Eric, and for the longest time, I thought I knew what love looked like. I believed it came in the shape of shared breakfasts, late-night laughter, and quiet glances from across the room. That was before I found out what betrayal looked like, how it moved, how it whispered, how it settled in like dust over everything familiar. It started with Jessica, the woman I'd planned to marry, the one I brought home to my parents and pictured raising kids with. She was brilliant, magnetic, the type of person who could command a room without raising her voice. We met at a 4th of July barbecue in Austin, her hand wrapped around a plastic cup, her laugh cutting through the heat. I fell hard, fast, and completely. Our relationship moved quickly, but it never felt rushed. She met my folks by Thanksgiving, moved in before the year was out, and by the time spring rolled around, we were talking rings and wedding venues like it was all meant to be. She got along with everyone, my family, my friends, even my boss. That should have been the first red flag. People who charm too easily are sometimes hiding the parts of themselves that can't stand the quiet. Still, I was blind to it. I loved her. That's all I knew. Until I didn't. It started small, as these things usually do. Her phone face down more often. Late work meetings she'd never had before. A new passcode she never explained. I asked her about it once, casually. She brushed it off, said work was overwhelming, that she just needed space to focus. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. The truth was more complicated, more cruel. The first real crack happened during a weekend trip we took to visit my friend Jeremy in Denver. We stayed in a cozy Airbnb, went hiking, drank wine by the fire. Everything looked perfect until I left my phone charging on the kitchen counter and borrowed hers to check the weather. I didn't go looking for anything. I just opened Safari. The tabs were still open. One of them was a Google search for how to know if he suspects you're cheating. My heart skipped. I remember the sound of my own breathing more than anything else. I closed the phone, handed it back, said nothing. Not then. But the seed was planted. And once doubt takes root, it grows fast. I started watching more closely. Her smile seemed less real. Her laughter had a different edge. One night, I followed her car after she said she was going to a yoga class. She pulled into a parking garage downtown, not near a studio. She stayed in the car for 20 minutes before another car pulled in. A man got out. Tall, confident. They didn't hug. They kissed. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't storm in or scream. I drove home, sat in the dark, and let the numbness take over. The next morning, she kissed me like nothing was wrong. That's when I knew it had been going on for a while. You don't fake normal that well unless you've had practice. I didn't confront Jessica right away, not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to understand how deep the hole went before I tried to climb out. I started paying attention to everything, her calls, her moods, even the way she smelled when she got home late. It was subtle at first, a different cologne clinging to her shirt, unfamiliar music playing quietly in her car when she picked me up, receipts from restaurants we never visited stuffed in the bottom of her purse. I took photos, logged dates, matched them with the lies she fed me. I knew I'd need proof, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted clarity. I didn't want to be gaslit when I finally said I knew. I wanted her to look me in the eye and realize I had receipts for everything she thought she got away with. It took me 3 weeks to gather enough, and in that time, I perfected the art of pretending. I smiled when she walked into the room. I held her hand in front of friends. I laughed at her jokes even when they made my stomach turn. I became an actor in my own life, and that role drained me more than I ever thought possible. When I finally had what I needed, I waited for a quiet night. We were at home, takeout containers on the coffee table, some mindless show playing in the background. I muted the TV, looked over, and said her name. She glanced at me, confused. I told her I knew. Not in a rage, not shouting. Just facts. Names, dates, addresses, even the make and model of the car the guy drove. Her face changed instantly. She didn't deny it. Didn't cry. Didn't even seem surprised. She just sighed, leaned back, and said, I didn't want it to come out like this. Like there was a good version of this betrayal. Like she had been planning to eventually come clean once the timing felt right. That made me laugh, but not out of humor. It was the kind of laugh you let out when your body doesn't know whether to scream or break. I asked her how long. She said nearly 6 months. 6 months of lies, of pretending, of sharing a bed with me while giving herself to someone else. I asked why. She said he made her feel wanted, exciting, like she wasn't stuck in some predictable life. She said I'd become too stable, too safe. Like being dependable was a flaw. I didn't yell. I didn't ask for more. I just stood up, grabbed the bag I'd packed earlier, and walked out. She didn't follow, didn't say my name, just sat there, staring at the paused TV screen like we were just hitting the commercial break in a story she'd grown bored of. I moved in with Jeremy for a while. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a spare key and made sure I ate. I spent most nights on his couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering how someone could stop loving you and still look you in the eye every day like nothing changed. That kind of silence is louder than shouting. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt, it rearranges you. The weeks after I left felt like I was learning how to be a person again, like I had to relearn how to wake up without anxiety pressing on my chest, how to make coffee without expecting her footsteps behind me, how to walk into a room and not scan it for evidence that I wasn't enough. Jeremy gave me space, which was exactly what I needed. No pep talks, no forced nights out, just quiet and the occasional reminder that I hadn't completely disappeared. I spent my days working and my nights driving around the city, no destination, just movement. Something about being behind the wheel made me feel like I had control again, even if it was just for an hour or two. I didn't check Jessica's social media. I didn't ask mutual friends what she was doing. I already knew she had moved on. People like her don't pause. They transition. It was 3 weeks after I left when I got a message from her. Just a single line. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because part of me wanted to see if she'd say anything that made the pain feel justified. Like there was some grand explanation that would make betrayal sound less personal. I agreed to meet. We picked a neutral spot, a park near the lake where we used to walk our dog. She showed up in a coat I bought her last Christmas. That detail stuck with me for some reason. We sat on a bench and stared at the water. She started with the usual, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean for things to happen like this. I was confused, I felt alone, I made a mistake." But none of it mattered anymore. The wound was already closed. What was left was scar tissue and silence. Then she said the one thing I didn't expect. "He left." I looked at her, waiting. "A week after you found out. Said it was too complicated. That I needed to figure things out with you first." I didn't respond. She kept going. "I messed everything up. I thought he loved me. I thought I'd feel more alive. But all I feel now is hollow." I nodded, because I didn't know what else to do. She asked if I hated her. I said no. And I meant it. I didn't hate her. Hate takes energy. And I had none left to give her. Then she said, "I think about what we had. What we could have had. Do you ever think about that?" I looked her in the eyes and said, "No, because it wasn't real." She blinked, like the words physically hit her. I stood up, said goodbye, and walked away. This time she didn't follow. I drove home with the windows down, letting the cold air slap the rest of her out of me. That night I slept through without waking once. Life didn't get better overnight, but it started to feel like mine again. I moved out of Jeremy's place and into a small apartment on the east side, nothing fancy, just quiet and mine. I started saying yes to things I used to avoid, dinner invites, trivia nights, early morning runs that turned into therapy without the price tag. Slowly, the anger turned into distance, and the distance turned into clarity. I stopped measuring time by how long it had been since Jessica. I stopped replaying old conversations looking for the moment things broke. Some things don't break in one place, they erode all over. The people around me began to notice the shift. My sister called one day and said, "You sound like you again." I didn't know I'd been sounding like someone else. One evening, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, Lena. We went to college together. Same friend circles, different majors. She always struck me as the kind of person who smiled like she knew more than she let on. We started talking. It was supposed to be 5 minutes. It turned into 2 hours on a park bench, then dinner the next week, then a habit neither of us questioned. She didn't know about Jessica at first. I didn't feel the need to bring it up. But eventually, I told her everything. I expected hesitation, maybe discomfort. But she just nodded and said, "That explains the way you hesitate before trusting people." She didn't try to fix it. She just made space for it. That mattered more than any grand gesture ever could. With Lena, things felt calm. Not boring. Not predictable. Just stable in a way that didn't feel fragile. There were no secrets, no late-night doubts, no conversations that ended with me staring at a door wondering when it would shut in my face. We built something slowly. Weekend getaways, shared playlists, dinners that turned into mornings. And for the first time in a long time, I stopped waiting for something to go wrong. I started believing in the possibility that maybe I wasn't broken, just bruised. That maybe what happened to me wasn't a reflection of my worth, but of her capacity. And hers was limited. Mine wasn't. Months passed, and life kept unfolding in small, unexpected ways that felt like healing even when I didn't realize it at first. Lena and I weren't perfect, but we were honest, and that counted for more than perfection ever could. She saw me for who I was, not for who I used to be, not for the version of myself I had to become just to survive what happened. We had slow mornings filled with burnt toast and half-finished coffee, long walks where we talked about everything and nothing, and arguments that didn't explode but resolved, like two people actually trying to understand each other instead of win. One day, we visited a bookstore downtown and stumbled across an old vinyl shop tucked beside it. She picked out a record by a band I'd never heard of and said, "This sounds like something you'd play when you don't want to think." That moment stuck with me. Because she was right. She always had a way of seeing past the surface. Later that week, I found that same record spinning in the background while I cooked dinner, and I smiled because I realized I wasn't thinking about Jessica anymore. Not her name, not her face, not what she was doing or who she was with. That part of my life didn't hurt anymore. It didn't even whisper. It just existed somewhere in the rear view, blurry and unimportant. And then, like clockwork, a message showed up. "Jessica. Again. Just a short one. I saw you the other day. You looked happy. I'm glad." I didn't respond. I didn't block her either. I just let the message sit there, unanswered, because not everything needs a reply. Some things are better left acknowledged in silence. Because sometimes peace isn't loud, it's knowing you don't owe anyone your attention anymore. That evening, Lena noticed I was quiet. I told her the truth. She didn't ask for details. Just said, "It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling, as long as you don't let it bring you back." And I knew I wouldn't. Because this wasn't about closure. It was about choosing what came next. There's a kind of peace that doesn't announce itself. It just shows up one day in the way your chest doesn't tighten when someone mentions their name, and how you stop checking who's watching your stories, and how laughter comes without guilt and silence isn't heavy anymore. That's where I found myself. Not healed in some fairy tale way, but whole enough to stop bleeding when I remembered. Lena and I eventually moved in together, not because it was time, but because it felt natural. We didn't do it for convenience or pressure. We did it because we were building something and wanted it to have a home. Our apartment was messy in a lived-in kind of way, shoes by the door, mugs left on counters, post-it notes with half-scribbled ideas stuck to the fridge. It was life, real and honest, the kind I'd always wanted. One night we sat on the fire escape, drinking cheap wine out of mismatched glasses, and she asked me if I ever thought about reaching out to Jessica. I said no, and I meant it. I'd made peace with the past by not trying to rewrite it. What happened, happened. And it brought me here. That was enough. But even so, there was one last thread I hadn't cut. The one where I still wondered if she ever truly understood what she did. So I wrote her a letter. Not to send. Just to say what I never did. I told her I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I told her I hoped she found what she was looking for, even if it cost us both something we never got back. And then I folded the letter, put it in a drawer, and never opened it again. Because some things are meant to be said only once, even if no one ever hears them. That night, I held Lena a little tighter, not because I was afraid of losing her, but because I finally understood what it meant to stay when love is safe, when it's chosen daily, not just in moments of passion or fear. I realized then that this story was never about revenge or redemption. It was about becoming someone I could be proud of. Time moved the way it always does when you're not watching it, quietly, steadily, reshaping the edges of who you were until one day you don't recognize the version of yourself that once begged someone to stay. I never reached back out to Jessica, never checked in on Josh, never tried to mend a story that was never mine to fix. Some people call that avoidance. I call it peace. Because closure doesn't always come with a final conversation or a dramatic apology. Sometimes it comes with silence, with living so far beyond the pain that it no longer knows how to find you. Lena and I didn't rush into forever. We grew into it. We built it in the everyday things, morning coffee, passing the phone charger without being asked, remembering how the other likes their eggs. It's not the stuff of romance movies. It's better. It's real. And real love doesn't make you feel like you're auditioning. It makes you feel like you've already arrived. One afternoon, we walked past a wedding venue where a couple was taking photos. She squeezed my hand and said, "Think we'd ever do something like that?" I smiled. Not because I was unsure, but because I realized I wasn't scared of the question. "Yeah," I said, "but we do it our way. No guest list full of people pretending to be happy for us. No fake speeches. Just truth. Just love that didn't need a spotlight to feel solid." I don't tell this story to get sympathy. I don't share it to shame anyone. I share it because someone out there is sitting in the middle of betrayal right now, wondering if they'll ever laugh again, wondering if trust can exist after being shattered, wondering if the ache will ever dull. It will. And you won't just laugh again. You'll love again. Differently. Stronger. And more honestly. Because pain, as much as it takes, also gives. It gives you perspective. It gives you depth. And if you're lucky, if you stay open, it gives you a second chance at something real. I didn't get the ending I thought I wanted. I got the one I needed. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.